all of us have expertise. You don't have to really spend that much time to dig them out. If you don't feel confident that you know that you have an expertise, email 10 to 15 families and friends, but also some of your colleagues that you trust. And they will tell you your unique contribution and the things that you're really good at. Hi guys, this is Fei Wu, and I am so thrilled that you are here. And in this video, I want to show you and talk to you about how you can make a living with your podcast without counting downloads. So most likely you haven't heard about me or my podcast called Feisworld, and we were established in 2014. Since then, we've interviewed hundreds of creative entrepreneurs, and their stories kind of span many different touch points of their creative career. So if you're a listener, most likely you'll be able to find something that you can relate to or aspire to become. So this video is about how you can do that without the traditional route of thinking about when am I going to get my sponsorship? How much are these advertisers are willing to pay? How many downloads I need to have? So let's just break it down for you. Right now, the podcasting market is actually more competitive than ever before. Roughly, as I'm recording this, in 2019, the month of August, because I just returned from Podcast Movement, there are roughly 750,000 podcasts that are broadcasting right now. And this number was much smaller. When I first got started, it was about 250 to 300,000 active podcasts. What I mean by that is the podcast that didn't die on its own. Meaning that people continue to release new content with active listenership. One thing I want to call out is how do still some of the podcasters make money through advertising? So it's true that a lot of these advertisers care about downloads, completion rate, and they're roughly looking at on a monthly average to be 100,000 downloads before they're willing to talk to you. So when you think about that, most podcasters release 4 episodes a month, that's roughly 1 a week. You need about 25,000 downloads to be able to talk to traditional advertisers and sponsors. Now, this video is about how you can actually cut through that noise and not to think about these things and potentially make a lot more money than advertising dollars, because there isn't that much the ad dollars unless you're a top 1% podcast. Roughly, people get paid between $250 to $400 per 100,000 downloads. So when you look at that rate on a monthly basis, can anyone survive on $500 or at the maximum of $1,000 a month? Probably not. So what I noticed with Feisworld since 2014 is within the first 10 episode release, I heard from a lot of guests and even listeners on the show. So here are the 3 ways that people could potentially reach out to you. Number 1, you will notice that a lot of these guests want to know something about you and not just being interviewed by you. I have the highest conversion rate with guests who have appeared on the Feisworld podcast. Number 2 is podcast guests referring their close families, friends, and even their own clients to you, to be your clients. So what it means is, for example, if someone who has just recently been interviewed by you, and you in this case happens to be a web designer or a developer, it's not necessarily the case timing-wise that your guest wants some part of that service. However, after learning that about you and really enjoying talking to you on your show, he might actually refer you to one of his friends or client. It has happened to me numerous times. Last but not least, listeners turned into clients. I mean, for me personally, this was a little more rare. Listeners have sent me lovely messages and books, very wishful thoughts and potential to collaborate on new projects. I haven't gotten as many direct, let's get together and I'll hire you directly. But the potential is kind of infinite when you think about it. So when you interview your guests next time, be prepared for something like this that might happen. You may be wondering, okay, I want to interview the guests. It's not because I simply want him or her to be a client. that is perfect, because the last thing you want to do is to approach someone simply because you want to do business with them. It's not because you really want them to be on your show and sharing their stories. This really has to happen somewhat organically, except, for example, back in 2017, I interviewed a lovely Atherton twins from Cirque du Soleil. So their names are Andy and Kevin Atherton. At the time, they're transitioning from one show in Vegas. That was that's where they lived. And that's actually, what is it called? A show that actually stayed at the venue. So they didn't really have to travel very much and was convenient for them. They liked the show and they have young kids at the time as well. But then later they found out that they've been recruited to the first ever Cirque du Soleil and Broadway collaboration. And this show is called Paramore, and it aired and it was live in New York City for about a year. And now they're actually performing in Hamburg, Germany. So when they transitioned from Vegas to New York, I thought it was a really good opportunity to make sure that their website has new content, as it will drive a lot more traffic. They're both headliner artists for Cirque du Soleil. I looked at their website, and to be honest, I didn't feel like it represented them very accurately. It wasn't telling a compelling story, so I reached out to them. And if you look into the description, I will include the email I actually sent to them. You want to be careful how you structure the verbiage, structure the email. You certainly don't want to bombard them with a number of tasks or things to do or things that they did wrong. Because, one of them, maybe perhaps your client himself was the person who built the website. And that's great. That's how you got in touch with him in the first place. But here's how I envision that they could take their website to the next level. And in my email, I even listed the top 3 ways to improve their website without tearing everything apart. And we had a wonderful collaboration. So I want to give you that example. And now what I want to talk about are some of the other examples from people from my podcaster mastermind group called Alt Podcasters. Some examples as well from our Facebook group. If you want to download my ebook on how to make a living as a podcaster without counting downloads, check out the description area and you'll be able to be directed to that article, that ebook right away. It's completely free. And here's another article, what I call an updated article on how other people are doing. Diego, who runs Dementes, it's a Spanish show. I hope I didn't really butcher that whole thing. Since the launch of Diego's podcast, he has a long list of business engagements and funnels because of his show. For example, he helped produce podcasts for other people. He just started producing the podcast for a big company, and he started selling courses on Teachable. He sold tickets already to meetups, events, workshops, and other merchandise. He was hired for speaking and consulting. So let's check out Andre, who runs Octanage, and it's in Portuguese, told me that one guest approached him to sponsor the podcast. Woohoo! Go Andre. And one guest invited him to work on her startup launching an AI toy, artificial intelligence toy. And on Instagram Live in 2018, Andre interviewed the founder of a travel agency for pets. Check it out. This story is kind of crazy. 2 people from the audience asked a ton of questions, and each of them flew 3 cats to destinations abroad. And the guest he interviewed on the show, who introduced her business, closed $6,000 worth of business that day. And last but not least, several people signed up to be mentored by Andre just by listening to his very brief call to action on the show. In addition, Andre witnessed many partnerships sprouting from the podcast and social presence, including digital courses, giveaways, invitations to consult for other businesses. This is really wonderful. Last but not least, Warner is the co-host of Catching the Next Wave podcast, and his co-host received a design project, and Warner was asked to be paying as an MC at a 3-day conference. So before we close today, I also want to talk about, you're probably thinking, okay, Faye, you're running a digital production company and you have all these services like web design, development, video production. Yes, we do. And we enjoy providing them to all the independent creators we support as part of our business. If you have no idea and you have this podcast, you haven't been running it for very long, or you have this blog, or you have this YouTube channel, so pay attention to a few things. Number 1, your most popular content. So if you have a website, and this is why you want to have a website, it's a debatable subject, and I want to leverage another video to really talk about it in greater details and how you could build it very quickly. But within your website, whether it's Squarespace, built-in analytics, or Google Analytics, it will teach you and show you a lot over time. Even within the 30-day period, it will talk about the most popular content that you can look at, and you begin to really see a trend, and you will know how you can build additional content similar to that topic. So number two, your content that's been referenced through other resources. Over time, you notice that even some of the news articles or other podcasts would like to, when you're being interviewed as a guest, they might ask you repeated questions. I know for me, the most common questions are, hey, Faye, I noticed that you build a free course to help other people kind of bring their podcast onto the Himalaya platform, which is the biggest Chinese podcasting platform with 530 million active listeners. It's crazy. Why do you launch the site? Why do you launch the free course? How have people interacted with it? To pay attention to the things that have been referenced by other people. Number three, questions and issues you raised that generated buzz. So questions and issues. Think about the topics that you're keen on developing, discussing on your show. Which ones were the ones that either surprising or as predicted that actually generated a lot of buzz that you could generate content and create call to actions and even help your clients with some of those issues? Number four, comments you received from other people. It was to my surprise that I received a lot of emails and comments based on an episode that I delivered, which I'll also link in the description below, that there was a guest who volunteered to talk about postpartum. After she had her babies, she had a lot of struggle as a female entrepreneur to balance work and life, and she was willing to discuss that. And at the time, I didn't think that my audience would find it particularly interesting or relevant, but to my surprise, I received a lot of private emails saying, wow, this was great. I'm so glad I'm not alone. Last but not least, when you feel stuck, you can check out a website called Answer the Public. It is pretty amazing. And from Answer the Public, you're able to search for any topic such as podcasting, web design, development, anything that you have done. All of us have expertise. You don't have to really spend that much time to dig them out. If you don't feel confident that you know that you have an expertise, email 10 to 15 families and friends, but also some of your colleagues that you trust. And they will tell you your unique contribution and things that you're really good at. So I hope this was helpful. And I included all the links and resources and examples I shared in the description, as well as the ebook, How to Make a Living as a Podcaster Without Counting Downloads. And thank you for joining me. And if you like this content, please give me a thumb up or down and let me know if this was useful. I can't wait to hear your stories as well.